Hello, I'm Reverend Kenny Callahan, the pastor of Metropolitan Community Church of Richmond. This Sunday is the second Sunday in our sermon series, The Spiritual Practice of Keeping Sabbath. The sacred texts for this Sunday are taken from Genesis, the second chapter, verses 1 to 3, and from John's story, the 15th chapter, verses 9 to 15. The verse that grabbed my attention and has my brain thinking is Genesis 2:2. On the seventh day, God had finished all the work of creation, and so on the seventh day, God rested. And here's what I'm thinking about this sacred text. It's a radical thing for us to realize that we have a God who takes time to rest, a God who takes a day off. Imagine that. This is not the image that we usually have of God. We tend to think of God as always on the job, working and ready to hear and respond to whatever whim or need that we have. And what happens if when we need God, that God is resting, that God is taking a break, that God is simply chilling out? Or can we imagine that as God rests, that God continues to hear our prayers? And what about when our prayers aren't answered on our timeline? Is that because God is resting? This verse gives us another dimension to think about God, that God is secure in God's power and place to stop, step back, and to rest. It's almost as if God's only job isn't to care for our every expectation instantly and being concerned with keeping the world going. It's almost as if God has other things to do and to be, that there are other parts and facets of God's personality. Could it be that God has other interests and thoughts, and that God isn't defined solely by the act of creating? The Genesis passage offers a clear reminder that God cares about us and our needs, and that God is lovingly in control. Besides creating everything that is and declaring all of creation good, God blesses everything that God has created. The creatures and the animals, we humans, and then God created the seventh day and called it sacred, holy, because on it, God rested. God does not need to be constantly working or involved in all the minute workings of our world. God's love is powerful and strong enough for God to rest and also keep things under control, meeting our needs by reminding us that we are loved, valued, and celebrated just the way we are. I believe the seventh day is for rest and also for God to enjoy what God has created. For God, an important part of creating the earth and all that is in it is enjoying the beauty and the uniqueness of each individual creation and the ways each part of creation interacts with and adds to the other, and the beautiful role that each of us plays in the overall reality and blessing of creation and of life. God does not create simply for the act of creating. God creates to enjoy, to interact with, to relate to, and to connect with all of God's creation. It's like a loving parent stepping back to see and watch their child learn and grow. I believe that resting is God's "I love you" by you being you. I love watching you. The challenge for us is to realize that we are all created in the image of God, every part of us and every experience that we have. And because God loves us so much, we are drawn into the rest of God as we imitate and mirror the actions of God. God rested, and therefore we are also to rest In fact, we are commanded to participate in the rest of God in order to remember who God is and who we are, apart from the things we do to keep things going. God's act of resting is an act of giving life. It is God who created us and gives us life. And giving us life is exactly what God does. And in giving rest, God is lovingly giving us life. The spiritual practice of Sabbath rest is recognizing that life and renewal is a gift of God's love for God's creation. Resting in God's love is a way for us to connect and to live in God and with one another. During his entire ministry, a huge part of the message that Jesus brings is to live on in his love, love that is given to him by God. We too are encouraged to do our best to live in love, to remain in love, and to be united through and by love. The truth is, we are all created for this love, created to live in and to share this love with others. Come on Sunday and help me continue to unpack this amazing text.